Drawing criticism from both Democrats and Republicans for comments she made on Katie Miller's podcast yesterday, talking about Charlie Kirk.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
The Attorney General later forced to clarify those remarks, posted on Twitter, quote, hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. Free speech protects ideas, debate, even dissent, but it does not and will never protect violence. It is clear this violent rhetoric is designed to silence others from voicing conservative ideals. Of course, when people talk about hate speech, they're not necessarily talking about incitement to violence, which is a whole other category.
Right. I mean, there's hate speech around, as we know, hate crimes, right, which can lead to violence. Obviously, hate speech that can lead to violence. But what about, I don't know, hate speech around hanging the former vice president of the United States? How about hate speech or inciting violence that leads to a violent mob attacking the United States Capitol on January 6th and a police officer being killed? I mean, the hypocrisy around this is just astonishing, given that, what we seem to hear from President Trump is hate speech or mean speech or negative, anything he just doesn't like. Anyone who doesn't ask him a question that he deems inappropriate seems to be, hateful. We've seen him berate many of our CNN colleagues and others for any question he just deems is out of bounds.
Yeah.
So what's concerning here is, the U.S. Constitution is supposed to help us guide around what's hate speech in terms of any audience that we might be speaking to, not just people we don't like.
I saw a lot of conservatives on social
Shalom, giving all honor, all praise, and all glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rechak, Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations unto the tabernacle of David, the hopeful elect, that are scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. It is very hypocritical that they want to use this situation to now want to take the gloves off and threaten to come after people, that are saying things that you don't agree with, and especially if it's directed at certain protected people groups and particular categories, because they don't keep the same energy across the board. I mean, we already know that. You got these rallies where these conservative MAGA racist folks, they out there yelling, "White man fight back." And then next thing you know, you're having lynches, near college campuses. You're starting to have racially motivated incidents. And they're not applying this same consequence to these people. So it's clear to see, where we're at. But this is more so, this devil, clamping down. They've been trying to attack free speech. They just needed the exact reasons, because what actually constitutes hate speech? Is it only when you say it towards a particular people group, a particular individual? This is how you know that this whole thing is a PSY op. Because you can say what the hell you want when one of our own, drops dead, or something happens to one of ours, and they'll turn you into a meme. That's nothing. They don't pull the gloves off when that occurs. But they doing so much for this one guy. And this is why it's time to and we've been pushing this for, for some time now, for, brothers to pay attention and be careful of, what you say and even what you post on social media. Like in reference to Mr. Kirk, I talk about how they probably didn't like some things that he had to say or some things that he did behind the scenes. And, and we can all think of the one group that was more than likely responsible if it all really happened. But always, try to say he exited stage left. And if you get my drift, that's just me speaking in code. All right. They had him exit stage left. So, you can extrapolate on what I mean by that, but we got to basically speak like that now. Okay. So they're on the attack mode. And, we've been saying that the scriptures tell you of what they would try to do. Let me first grab this one. Isaiah 29. And I'm going to start at the 20th verse. And it says, "For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off, that make a man an offender for a word." So you can now cause offense when you speak against a particular people group, a particular government, a people that claim that, they'll have a term that they'll use against you if you say something about their control, their greed, their crimes, against the world, against humanity. You speak against the status quo, they can make you an offender, just for, speaking a word, even if it's factual. So it's a crime now to speak facts. It says, "And lay a snare for him that reproveth in the gate." And I think, this Kirk, PSY, I believe that was intended to be set up as a snare. They catch a lot of people, and now they're creating a database on people who have something to say negative. They're, catching people on X, on Facebook, Instagram. If you saying things that are negative towards this guy, they're now starting to track you down, and they're getting you fired from your job. So this whole thing was really a setup. Okay, that's what a snare is. A snare is a trap. You set traps unless you're trying to catch somebody. You're trying to set them up. It says, "For him that reproveth in the gate." And the prophets are known for reproving. The scriptures tell us to reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all long suffering and doctrine, which we use the scriptures. That's mainly what we use. That's what we speak from. Okay, that's our source. But they're even trying to stop that. Because what is the criteria on what is considered hate speech? Speaking facts, speaking the truth, even if it's in a negative light. The truth is the truth at the end of the day. Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? Well, obviously with these devils, yeah. All right, so you got to be extra salty now. Speaking in code. This is just where we at right now. It says, "And turn aside the just for a thing of naught." So, so if we out there preaching the scriptures and we happen to quote Malachi 1 verse 2, and it's not inciting any violence when we read it, We're just giving you the perspective of the Bible and what the Lord himself said. You're going to accuse the Most High? You know, you're going to say what he said to the prophets was hate speech? It'll just prove once and all how hypocritical the society is. All right? Very hypocritical, man. You've done a lot of violent things, you know, and incited violence. And the lady that was speaking, she even brought up January 6th. You know, Trump, he was known to incite. All right? And now it's starting to feel like we're going back to the Jim Crow days. The way these Edomites are starting to behave, it's absurd. But you can't say something against this person, and you can't say nothing about what's going on the other side over there. You know, all this massive genocide, you can't say nothing about it. They have a new bill where basically it pretty much keeps from holding those people accountable. So it's all hypocritical, but all they're continuing to do is isolate themselves. You know, you're becoming more and more despised by the nations. He said, "I will make you small among the heathen; thou art greatly despised." Because how are you the only people that would be legal ramifications to penalize you if you say something against them? Well, okay, we'll ban drill music then. Let's see y'all do that. Because that's hate speech and it incites violence. Are you going to keep the same energy? No, because you have to benefit from that. You get paid off of promoting that and using that as an influence over our people. Talk about the hypocrisy. Trump, he keeps talking about the violence in these cities, and because it's so violent, you know, he's sending in the National Guard into these cities. You gonna send in the National Guard to these record exec buildings that's pushing and promoting music where these rappers are speaking violence, inciting violence against one another on instrumentals? Is what these jakes are listening to every day. So like I said, it's all hypocrisy. And that shows you that this man, he's not, there's nothing righteous about him. Let me see if I could get a quick scripture. This is Deuteronomy 25 and verse 1. It says, if there be a controversy between men and they come into judgment, and that the judges may judge them, then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. Yahushua said, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. So fair judgment should go all across the board. But they don't do that. So this is all aimed in secret at the perfect, because they really don't want us out there. They know what we're speaking is the truth and it's affecting them. But even then, you know, they're trying to crack down. So it's like we have to water down our words, which, you know, we're not going to water down what the Bible say. We're going to tell it to you how it's written. But the fact that we got to, you know, speak in code, so to speak, it is what it is. But we're in that time, and then it's only a matter of time before that famine of the word hit. Where we're not going to even be allowed to be on any of these platforms, and then eventually out there in the street. Let me get that in Amos. Amos 8 and 11. It says, "Behold, the days come, saith the Lord power, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord." When the watchmen are missing in action, you're gonna notice. You're gonna take notice almost immediately, because we're known to be out there, very consistently. Our brothers are out there sometimes twice a week. Brothers will go one day in the middle of the week and then another day on the weekend. And then there's videos going up every day. Lessons. So if the decree came and we had to basically not do any lessons anymore, or we just couldn't be on social media anymore, we just go out, then you already know that it's going to be a limited amount of time before we can't go out on the street. People will take notice fast, man, especially Jake, because they know we're out there. And it says that in Isaiah the 30th chapter, thine eye shall see thy teachers, and you shall hear a word behind thee saying, when you're going to hear a word behind you saying, to the left and to the right, walk ye, in that path. And so it's going to feel different when you no longer hear that word. We try to get Jake to, call them back to their heritage, call them back to, their true God, and to call upon his true name and his only begotten Son, and repentance from what? Their sins. Jake will no longer hear that, because this man wants to crack down, right? It says, and they will wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east. So Jake gonna be wandering around. They're gonna be traveling, right, all over town, all over cities. Let me try to go over here. Let me try to go over there. Maybe they over here on this side of town. Maybe they are at City Hall. Maybe they, whatever. They shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord and shall not find it. All right. And ultimately, even though this devil is the one who's cracking down, it's going to be ultimately the will of the Most High. He going to be done talking. So right now, while you have it, this is, what it's for, is for you to seek the Lord while he may be found. Because Esau, he's at it, man. The devil's come down having great wrath because he knoweth that he had but a short time. So let's finish this out.
Media taking real issue with what Attorney General Bondi had to say.
Yeah, and I think that's why she had very worthwhile clarifications. Look, you can't yell fire in a movie theater. You can't yell bomb at an airport. There are consequences to those actions when they turn violent. We know that this killer was on Discord and all the chants talking to people wanting violence against Charlie Kirk. If this was aimed...
So that means that they're going to... some of these apps were created for the same reasons that they created Facebook and Twitter, IG. It's for surveillance purposes, man. They want to look at, what people are saying, what in these different groups, what are they posting? What are they sharing? And I believe over in the UK, they already, they're watching over people on WhatsApp and these other different platforms, just to monitor, what people are saying and what they're sharing. Notice how all these different events that they feed you through the media, there's always some type of motive that came from, their background or their social media post history. They always got to show you, what their intentions were based on things that they may have said or posted. And we don't even know if it's even true. We don't know if it's AI. We don't know if it's, somebody created it. They used it to go with the story so that they can use it against you when they come down with, law and order. This is another, we already told you this is another Hegelian dialectic, because they're going so hard with this whole thing. Like, sheesh. They're going super hard over this thing. And we already heard some things that this man didn't have to say. All right. All of a sudden, he getting all this saint treatment. You would have thought the Lord himself came back and died again. But he's had some things to say about that people group, and denied, them, being in their pockets. And then 2 weeks later, something happens. And now this is nothing. All they're talking about is this guy. And you better not, we have zero tolerance for anybody to say anything about him. So this man, he ain't gonna take no breaks. They want action. So they have to use certain crisis to execute that.
At another group besides conservatives, I think our tone would be a bit different. Look, I agree that there is a difference between hate speech and speech that's asking for violence or inciting people toward violence. But I think we're right now very close to that cusp, and a lot of left-wing chatter, and it needs to be looked at. And by the way, the administration says they have evidence that groups are funding a lot of that. That should be looked into.
So Terry, our former colleague,
on both sides, because this is the both wings are connected to the same bird, man. The same bird. Okay, we're not ignorant of Satan's devices. They both are being used, and people still can't see it. They still trust in this system.
ABC's Jonathan Karl tried to ask President Trump about this earlier today. Take a listen.
A lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
We'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate. You have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe
Would that
they'll
be
come after
appropriate?
ABC. Well, ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right?
They want to talk about hate speech. Man, you had a second grader like 9 months ago. I don't know if it was in Washington or Baltimore, one of those cities on the East Coast. At elementary school, he was found hung in the boys' bathroom. Said a fourth grader did it, and allegedly the boy he survived, but he told his mother that the boy that did it, he said, this is what our ancestors used to do to your people. Now you know that these little children, when they emulate something or when they do something, it's because they either seen it or were taught it. When parents are able to teach their children stuff like that, that's the very key definition of what you guys are trying to come with right now. All right, that right there. If a parent is teaching as child that this is what we used to do to those groups, that this group of people, and then your child goes and tries to emulate that, those parents should be held for hate speech because that incited violence. And that Jake boy almost lost his life. You know? But that was just a story that came and went, you know, because it didn't fit the criteria for a certain people group. So the people are not going to be as outraged. But had that have been, like, let's say you have, you know, two children, and you know one of them is a 48er. He's a you know, a child that grew up, you know, in that culture or whatever, and another kid, his parents don't like those said people, and he teaches his child. You see that turn that up to 400. You feel that? Yeah. Well, those people over there, we used to put them, you know, and that's, you know, like I said, I got to speak in code because we know the truth about that as well. the truth been out for a while on this. They lie about everything, but I'm just, you know, using this analogy, you know, just to convey the point. But if I'm showing my child things like that, and I'm teaching them something, and they go and try to emulate that, what I did is the actual hate speech, and it can cause somebody to, you know, perform that violence based off of what was inherently taught to them. And guess what? It's been this way for hundreds of years in this country. You're the embodiment. You Edomites, you're the embodiment of real hate. Let me get Amos. They should be the last ones to talk about hate, anything, speech, violence, because that's all you've been this entire time. Amos 1:11, it says, "Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Edom," right? Adawam, you red people, right? Trump, he's damn near orange, but he's like a red. "And for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword," all right, violence, "and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." So that's ongoing hatred. And Esau, he there was never a moment ever in time where he didn't try to pursue his brother with violent hatred, hostility. You know, going back to Cain and Abel, that same energy. And then don't want to be held accountable for what you've done. Now this devil Trump wants to go and erase all that evidence in that history. So you can't say nothing about them, or you'll be punished, but he can go and erase the atrocities that was done to your ancestors. That ain't even, you ain't even gotta say anything. That's an action of hatred. Because you would never see him trying to go and erase Holocaust museums. He would never do such a thing. You know, any museums, you know, any books, you know, depicting and going into that whole thing, he would not have it banned. So it's clearly, you know, this man is waging war, and he's being a hypocrite too. Let me get Ezekiel 35. It is Ezekiel 35:1. It says, "Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. And say unto it, Thus saith the Lord power, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred." All right, what those Palestinians over there are experiencing is what we've been experiencing for millenniums by these people. Perpetual hatred. All right, and now they're gonna say that you know, BB, he been making all kind of threats about anybody that say anything towards them, against them, while they're committing this heinous crime, you know, on humanity. All right, he thinks that you should suffer some type of punishment if you speak out against what they're doing over there. That, come on, man, you can't have it both ways. So he's trying to mask his hatred while trying to point out yours. And it don't even have to necessarily be hate if you're speaking the truth. Speaking the truth is not hatred. Now, if I speak something that causes damage and it happened to be false, that's hatred. Defamation and slander, that's hatred. It ain't slander or defamation if it's factual. But you can speak facts about them, but if it hurts their brand or their image, or it exposes them in any kind of way, they can classify that as hate speech. This is just where we at with it. And that's why the Most High is going to end up getting you. We don't have to say anything violently towards anyone. We already know what is already written. The Most High going to handle that. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and the people that are targeted by that hatred is you tribes, are you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, not Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, it's perpetual, and that's why they've been after you and you only. You know, they set up. They had another incident where, you know, y'all know it. It went viral. Okay, people saw close-ups. They watched it and evaluated it, analyzed it, and saw that it was another PSY. And you did that to incite, flare up people's emotions, and get that racial tension brewing. That's exactly what it was intended for. You know. Then you got this dude, the Baby, a rapper. You know, he decided to do a music video. He did a song and he shot a video, and it was basically like a reenactment of that situation. And when it got to the part where the nigga with the dreads gets up and he was about to do what he was gonna do, you see the Baby's hand catch him and prevents him from, you know, carrying through with it. And then he walks him off the train, and, you know, you got all the security and law enforcement outside of the train. So it was basically like he saved the day. He saved the Ukrainian girl from, murder. And guess what? It was real coonish, right? But he still got obliterated on social media. He still got backlash. So we're living in a very sensitive world right now. You know, very sensitive. But this man, he could still have overt hatred as long as it's geared towards you tribes. That's never a problem. George Floyd became a meme. He did that was a straight up mockery. All right, Candace Owens, she was able to get up there and tell you it wasn't a knee being on his neck. You know, you can openly get up and say all type of things that were inconsistent about that whole situation. You won't get flagged. You won't get a strike. But say that situation on that train is a PSY or the Orem, Utah Valley College situation is a PSY. Now now that's hate speech, it's bullying, or whatever they can try to classify it as. So this is why the Lord is going to do. He's going to be the one to handle him. It says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity. It's been happening for a while. You know, even recorded back to the time of the Babylonian captivity. The hand that they had in that whole thing. They helped them Babylonians. It says, therefore, as I live, saith the Lord power, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Saith, thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. So, you know, you can shed some more blood, you know, primarily of our people, but eventually you're gonna have to pay that tab. And when the Lord comes back, and he's gonna hold you accountable. We're just testifying against you, but you will be held accountable. Okay. So yeah, just be be salty, man. Colossians 4:6. It says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man. And so let it be with grace and seasoned with salt. You know, basically be wise with your words. You know, because the enemy is lurking. You know, they plotting against the just. So we'll finish this out, and then we'll close out.
But he paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech, so maybe they'll have to go after you.
First of all, the notion that Jonathan Karl has a lot of hate in his heart.
He's one of the fairest and most decent people.
I don't think he has any hate in his heart. But what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, first, as to Trump, look, this is basically what every petty autocrat wants. Make your whims the law. Okay, little clarity. There's no such thing as hate speech in American federal law. The words never appear in the U.S. Code. And the Supreme Court, for decades, Republicans and conservatives alike, have again and again and again said when the government wants to punish speech, they have to meet an incredibly high burden. That came in a case where somebody threatened to shoot Lyndon Johnson, in a case where somebody burned a cross on a lawn, in a case of stalking a singer-songwriter, and in the case of the Westboro Baptist Church, which staged these despicable demonstrations outside the funerals of fallen soldiers. Each time, the Supreme Court overturned a conviction won by the government. It is almost impossible to win.
Like you had the one Edomite, which they actually caught him, but he basically made the threat that he was going to go and shoot up. Was it a preschool? But basically, he's going to go after Jake kids in a preschool, and they got his ass. You know, you'd be stupid to even say something like that in public, online. Like, why would you even make that public? You know, so basically these public threats, you know, terroristic threats, you know, they're gonna definitely come see about you. You know, that wouldn't be wise to air out like that. So they're just basically telling you that gradually you're being infringed on, you're being watched, you're being closely monitored in every way. Even in these little apps that, you know, brothers chat on. You know, be real salty, man.
But his comments there come the same day that President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Today I have the great honor of bringing a $15 billion defamation and libel lawsuit against the New York Times, one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of our country, becoming a virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. The New York Times has been allowed to freely live smear and defame me for so long that stops now." In a note to staff, the New York Times publisher said, quote, "Everyone, regardless of their politics, should be troubled by the growing anti-press campaign led by President Trump and his administration." TW, any issues with that? What do you think of him suing the New York Times for articles that he felt portrayed him negatively?
Well, he has the right as an American to bring lawsuits against those who he thinks defame him. He obviously won the lawsuit against ABC for defamation when he was called.
Well, he didn't win it. They settled.
Well, they settled. But what was the core of it? It was defamation, being called a rapist.
The core of it was the business interests of Disney.
Well,
Right.
well,
That's
perhaps,
the core.
but why the case? Hold on a second. Why the case? Oh, bear with me.
No.
Why the case was brought was for that reason. He has the right to do it. Okay. There is. I saw one poll in YouGov saying 60.
All right. So that's pretty much it. I really wanted to cover what the Attorney General said. That Edomite, but yeah, man. You know, it's high level hypocrisy going on. But at the end of the day, you know, they just want an agenda accomplished. You know, more control, so they seize, you know, the rights that you do have left. All right, they seizing that as they use these events. So pay attention, man, and walk circumspectly. So anyway, with that, let me give all honor, all praise, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and to the next one, Shalom.